Well, good morning. My name is Dakota, and I'll be leading us in our worship conversation today. I'm glad to be here. I'm especially glad that you're here because it's a big reason I come back too. Today's our second Sunday conversation in this series called Quotables. We call this series Quotables because we're taking a few sayings or quotes that we might have heard others use or that we more than often said ourselves at some point, and then we hold them up to some truths we know about the gospel, and then we just see what holds. So today's quotable, I actually remember the first time I ever heard it. It was my freshman year in college, about 2 months into my time there, in an accounting seminar, of all places, an accounting seminar. And the professor told us to bloom where you are planted. And even had a whole slide dedicated to it, something probably along the lines of this. And I remember being struck by it. I really got to me. 2 months into a brand new place with brand new people, feeling equally unsettled, scared, and excited. I thought this saying was beautiful and just what I needed to hear. Which reminds us something that David talked about last week, which is how much context has everything to do with one-liners like these. And I have the sense that most people need something empowering or encouraging. This assumption is based off of lots and lots and lots of Google Images options that I found when searching for this quotable, and how unanimously and overwhelmingly uplifting they are. I think probably some of us have a canvas like that in our living room, or it's on our laptop. I would. It encourages this sort of thriving or flourishing mindset at all costs. So this takes us to our first small group question of the day. How do you define flourishing or blooming? What does our world teach us when it comes to this, what blooming means? So I'm going to ask you to take the next 3 to 4 minutes or so, get in groups of 3 to 5, introduce yourself, and then just listen or share with the group around this question. How do we define blooming? So, if you want to finish your thoughts, circle up, finish your last thought. And as you're wrapping that up, we're going to ask you to share something back out about how we define blooming. How do we define blooming? As you wrap up your conversation, think about something else you heard or a good thought around this idea, how we define blooming, and go ahead and share it out loud. How do we define blooming? What's something you heard? Success, okay? What else? Opening up. That's nice. That's kind of like metaphorical, right? Is blooming, right? Maybe? Okay. Maybe I just tried to make it metaphorical. What else? Unpredictable. What else? Finality. Yeah. So blooming as some sort of connotation of finality. Because once you bloom, where is there left to go? Oh. So the question is, what are you, Bill? Okay. So Bill said there's annual and perennial. So it's those that keep blooming and those that don't. Interesting. What else? Yeah. So some blooming takes forever. So there's an aspect of perseverance associated with it. A better version of oneself. And then what did someone say over here? Fulfilling a purpose. Yeah, making new things. Anything? Reaching potential. It could be fleeting. Being involved. Wow, so I think God probably dreams up all of those things for our lives. Success, opening up, being a better version of yourself, being involved, perseverance, fulfillment and purpose, making new things. But my own experiences, I've begun to internalize a lot of these to be the only standard and the indication of a right life. Especially with my own personal transitions, I've spent time considering how God dreams for us much more than just the flourishing moments of our lives. So while this quotable encourages us to thrive and places me in this kind of single-story blooming standard, it puts me in a place where I feel what is most right and good is to be blooming, to be fulfilled or happy, content, to be opening up wherever I am, no matter what. And this quotable has taught me that my goal and my marker for success is to bloom, wherever I am, no matter the costs. So I wonder, what is the alternative? What's the alternative if we don't bloom where we're planted? Say it out loud. What could be an alternative? Die. What else? You wilt. Failure to thrive. You get you get weed whacked. There's a lot of metaphor in there too, I'm sure. Just lopped off. You could get transplanted. Yeah, so maybe your roots just keep getting deeper. No one else is able to enjoy you. So then you become the soil. Yeah, recycled. Try again next year. Yeah, why not? Try again. I love that. So if this quotable, bloom where you're planted, is taken at face value, it doesn't seem to encourage this other stuff. Trying again next year, failure to thrive, wilting, getting transplanted, dying, getting weed whacked. But all that stuff is discouraging when it is also all inevitable. The alternatives you just shared are all realities of life. They are what has been and what will lie ahead. Death, dying, wilting, failure to thrive. In small ways and in big ways. They're all guarantees just as much as we hope blooming to be. By the sounds of how we've defining it all, the blooming part just doesn't seem to be a real, sustainable, healthy expectation for always. I'm being in a place where my family and I are in the middle of a literal transplant. It is terrifying to hold the expectation to bloom in a new place with new people. And I know, based on my own history, that the blooming part is not something that will come anytime soon. So Jesus shares with some folks some ideas around this topic when he's on the eve of his own death, on the eve of what seems to be anything but a blooming moment for him. And this is what he says. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. So as he predicts his own literal dying, Jesus is trying to help his friends understand the impact of death and the necessity of giving away life as necessity for thriving, for blooming. Instead of Jesus taking this time to say, hey, blooming and living is the way to more living and blooming, Jesus says the exact opposite. Jesus says dying is the way to more living. You have to experience death to experience life. And this Jesus quotable captures a really, really important paradoxical gospel relationship. Jesus is describing what is also being written across his own whole life and what's being written across our own life, and that is a sacred, necessary, inherent, symbiotic, divine relationship between death and life. The truth that we learn from Jesus' story is that death is the way towards new life, to thrive, to flourish, to bloom. And to thrive, to flourish, to bloom is also to lose, to hurt, to let go, and to die. So Richard Rohr, a Franciscan monk, puts words to this cycle of transformation, which I think is too a cycle of blooming. He says all transformation and growth happens in three essential stages. Number one, order. Number two, disorder. And number three, reorder. Now, order is a natural and good way to begin. It's safe. It offers a container. And it's comfortable, but it can be dangerous if we stay in it too long. It's what we know to be comfortable, right or wrong. It could be our job, some of our friends, our family, pieces of a community, church. What else? Think to yourself, when have I experienced order in my life? And after order, we have disorder. Disorder is when we go through natural trials and adversity. It's when we have experiences that uproot the order we previously knew. It's the uncomfortable part of the process. Rohr calls this space when we leave the order of our lives into disorder, a sacred open space. And he says it's painful because it's letting go of what we're used to. So when have I experienced disorder in my life? After we've worked through disorder, we move into reorder, says Rohr. Reorder is when we find resolve. We have begun to learn from our pain and find life in our own dying and sit in the surrender that is here and now. So when have I experienced reorder in my life? Now, what else matters greatly in this transformation process is the environment in which we experience the order and the disorder and the reorder. So here's our other small group question of the day. What types of support, context, and space is healthy for us to have so that we may progress through order, disorder, and reorder? Take a few minutes to talk about that in your groups and we'll come back. I'll ask you to wrap up your conversation. And as you circle back up to the larger group, if you share back out some of the important things you talked about, what are some context or support or space that's healthy for us to progress through this cycle of disorder and reorder? What are some things you thought were valuable? So maintaining a context that it's all lasts forever. Time is a big factor. Time. The process just lasts forever. What else? So remembering that it's a repeating process through life, not just a one-time arrival. Say more about that. Okay, so what's the word you used? Disruptor. So staying in this phase that you're in, there's valuable in staying in the disorder. Christian said it's helpful and healthy to analyze what caused the disorder, to learn from it. So for support, you need people who are compassionately honest to be truth tellers. Yeah, and you need just people who will listen. The type of support you'll need may change depending on the type of disorder you're in. Yeah. So being cautious about the support you seek out. So friends who will just sit with you until God comes.
Also friends who will be aware of the disorder, not say, oh, what are you talking about? Come on, you got stuff going on.
So friends who are aware of the disorder and acknowledge it with you, not just ignoring it. So Lori Schreiner is a scholar at Azusa Pacific University, and she works with a research team learning about what it takes students in college to thrive, or what we could really loosely parallel to blooming. And we use this research a lot with our work with students at Virginia Tech, but I think the themes that Lori is uncovering isn't just limited to traditionally aged college students. And one of the sound bites about the necessary conditions in which students thrive, one of the things that Lori and her team have uncovered, and an idea that's been confirmed by hundreds of other educational researchers, is that establishing a sense of belonging, a healthy, honest sense of belonging, is the difference maker. Experiencing the turmoil that is finding disorder and reorder, the journey of ongoing transformation, uncovering resiliency and meaning, is all best supported when we do it with just a few others who can hold on and with and for us. And so this is where you come into my own death, into life, into death story. 6 years ago, I left my own order at the time. I left Texas, family, community, home. I drove into Blacksburg with just a 4x8-foot U-Haul, which I thought was huge at the time, until we packed this week, and I needed 10 times that much. No pre-existing, real, or meaningful connections. No one whom I have known by or who knew me. And I spent my weeks learning how to stay afloat through grad school classes, work, an unexpected free time in an empty apartment with one recliner, a bed, and one table that doubles as a desk, nightstand, and dinner table. The most versatile piece of furniture I've ever owned. I made it through the week, reaching my way to Sunday night, the eve of it all starting again, and while it is new and different and exciting at times, it's lonely. While Roar said this is the sacred space, it feels far from it. It's dark and full of longing and heartache. It's disorder. I make it to Sunday evening each week just so I can cry the stored up tears from the week before. And then I walk across the creaky 40s hardwood floors to my bed and prepare for it all to start again the next day. More disorder. And the years in between then and now have been laden with moments of my own self-dying, giving way to new life. And it has been painful. And frankly, almost impossible to name and to see and to trust until I've been able to pull myself up on the shore of the other side. Temporarily, of course, to be then swept into another current of disorder. And between now and then, I found lots of what you described earlier, of healthy community, of people who will sit until God comes, of people who are honestly compassionate, truth tellers, people who will listen and acknowledge the disorder. I found people to be known by and people to know. I found enormous healing and transformation in the reorder, and I found huge amounts in the avalanches of more disorder, which yet again, 6 years later, in these very moments, my family finds ourselves in the middle again, as we are on the edge of another big disorder moment. And it feels strange and nonsensical to trust the promise that deciding to let go and give away more of what has been comfortable will give way to more life. It's still hard to trust that choosing disorder yields sacred space made into reorder when I want more than anything to hold on to what I can guarantee. And while this current wave of disorder has been faithfully held by and with those who we love and those who love us, it still feels terrifying. It still feels heartbreaking. It doesn't feel like blooming, and it still feels hard. Once again, we stand in sacred space. One of you asked me a few weeks ago, Dakota, what has Blacksburg taught you about who God is? What has Blacksburg taught you about who God is? And being all in with you, with the background of Blue Ridge Mountains, has offered some of the most remarkable gifts in my entire life. It's the gift of holding on to and sharing each other's order and disorder and reorder in the quietest of ways, like making sense of a house sale falling through or not getting a job, and in the most mountainous of ways, like losing a parent or a friend or getting a brand new baby. With each other, by way of being known, we find small ways to sit in the sacred space together. Trusting this order-disorder cycle. What we know to be true is that it's been written across our own history. And I personally have counted on you to sit in my own sacred disorder space with me, bringing the hope and the trust that I often can't clutch on in isolation. And then to be sitting there with me as it becomes reorder once again, to often offer gratitude for the life that is always being born. So this is what I know to be true about who God is because of this place and because of you. God is order. God is disorder. God is reorder. And God is the grace that holds it all together. Trusting a space that can be tangled, painful, empty, and lonely. Yes, this sacred space, being all in with those who hold on to the unending promise of life with and for you until the light comes again, is God. It is God. And let that be so. Amen.